Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today, we are discussing a real gem of a Rolex Oyster Perpetual Sea-Dweller Submariner 2000. This is the reference 1665. Low 5 million series serial numbers, roughly 1977. The watch has what appears to be a 4th series dial with a lovely uniform tritium fade on both hands as well as dial base. The watch is remarkably intact with evidence of the original factory bevels evident on all 4 lugs, which you can see bear marks of use and wear, as we have not refinished this watch, nor will we. The timepiece measures 40 millimeters in diameter. This is the first generation of the Sea-Dweller, as originally launched. This is the 1665. It is fairly thick, largely due to a more robust case construction and an enormous bubble-like plexiglass crystal, 16.7 millimeters thick, and the watch includes a 47.6 millimeter lug-to-lug measurement with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw the watch on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters circumference. It wears like a more modern watch than, say, a 1977 Submariner 5513 or 1680. This watch is larger than those. It's more massive. As a result, it has more wrist presence. It is not a big watch by the modern standard of the term. It's certainly not oversized. But if you want a vintage watch that doesn't feel petite, this is going to be your option. Nevertheless, because it is only a 47.6 millimeters lug-to-lug, I could see wearing this watch on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference, and even trying it on a lady's wrist. Now, taking a quick look at the bracelet, I want to get a little bit closer here so you can see every pertinent detail, starting with the reference of the bracelet, which is 93150, and the fact that it is a D-series bracelet. So you can see that quite well, and you could see that it uses 585 end links. Now, the timepiece is in excellent shape. The bracelet is in excellent shape. It has lots of structural integrity. You could see that the links are as handsome and as well preserved as the case. We have a flip-out dive extension built into the traditional Rolex Oyster clasp, and you can see that its polish, satination, and then embossed link as well as crown definition are remarkably sharp and original. We have a snap-shut single-lock clamshell, and then, of course, we have several different divots drilled inside the clasp, so you can use your strap tool to restation the anchoring point of the bracelet inside the clasp. As ever, the removable links are fixed by screws. Rolling over to the case, you can see Rolex's helium escape valve on the flank of the watch. It's well integrated and unobtrusive. It's one of the hallmarks of a Sea-Dweller, setting a Sea-Dweller apart from a Submariner. Now, you can see there are some marks in the lugs. There are some marks in the satination on the lug hoods. Not enough to deform the watch, but these are evident to the eye. You could see that we've preserved the watch, and that's our intent with every vintage timepiece. It's only factory once. We prefer not to restore in any unnatural, service-oriented, aesthetically oriented fashion. The only reason we would refinish this watch is if the owner buys it from us and then requests it. So we don't do these things to beautify. Trip lock crown, screw down. I recommend you not dive with a vintage dive watch, mostly because over time, while they retain their inherent durability and even their ability to run precisely, it is very difficult to make a vintage case highly water resistant. Nevertheless, if you wish, we will water test the watch before you receive it. The timepiece features a bidirectional rotating bezel. And as you could see, the dial is original tritium, whereas the bezel has been replaced subsequently at some point by luminova. And you can see there is a distinction between how the tritium fades almost immediately and the luminova of the bezel remains distinct. Now, the watch has an aluminum bezel insert, and of course, it doesn't meet the modern ISO 6425 dive watch definition, but you can still use this watch as a timing instrument, and I like to have a dive watch bezel for 2 reasons. First, it allows me to more easily time events, such as cooking, time before a meeting, time before I have to run for a flight. But then I can also use the dive bezel as a memory tool. So most of the time when I have my Zinn, which is not a dive bezel, to be honest. It's a timing bezel that's bidirectional. But if I want to remember something, what I'll do is I will always displace the bezel, and you could do that. A little visual tick, something that is out of sorts and irregular to remind you that you have an errand or a phone call or a memento by which to mark your day. So it is a great reminder. The dial is a 4th series. You can see there are several different Red Sea-Dweller dials, and this one is what's known as a 4th series. A couple of different things set it apart, but primarily it is the lack of serifs, the fact that the feet next to 2000 are not angled, the fact that the 6 is closed, and then a big determinant between generations tends to be the alignment of all these characters on the dial. The dial is unmarked. There's no oxidation, there's no water damage, no evidence of accidental contact by an unskilled watchmaker, and the hands are in remarkable condition, as they usually show wear and handling marks over time. No such problem here. Underneath the case back, I'll show you the case back. The Rolex base 1570 would be in there, so this would be like a 1575 with the date. You do see on the case back that it mentions it's an Oyster case, it has the gas escape valve, and this is patented. What's inside is mechanically identical to the Submariners of the period. Automatic winding, 48-hour power reserve, a 1575. It has a quirky vintage beat rate of 19,800 vibrations per hour. It has hacking seconds, but not a quick set date. The movement is chronometer certified, and it has a free-sprung balance with a handmade Breguet overcoil and 5-position adjustment to better enable it to pass those COSC chronometer certification tests, and it pivots on 26 joules. It has a single-sided balance cock rather than the later full balance bridge, but it is very accurate when properly serviced and properly maintained, and it remains quite tough to this day. The timepiece is handsome, versatile, and somewhat eternal, as it looks as good today as it did back in 1977. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this vintage Rolex Oyster Perpetual Red Sea-Dweller.